Good day, I'm Dennis Ward. Welcome to APTN National News. Tomorrow is Nunavut Day, and there is some news today ahead of the public holiday in the territory, as the Premier of Nunavut announced he will not be seeking re-election this fall. In a message to the people of Nunavut today, PJ Akiakuk says he made the decision after deep reflection and many heartfelt conversations with his family. The first time MLA was elected in November 2021 during the midst of the global pandemic. Akeeagok says his best accomplishments are the Devolution Agreement, which returns control of lands and natural resources to Nunavut, the National Early Childhood Education Agreement, and the launch of Nunavut 3000, a plan to build 3,000 new homes across the territory. The Premier says there have also been some trying times in recent years, including the global pandemic, local tragedies, including community buildings lost to fire, and ongoing water crises. In a statement, Akeeagok says, in part, I am not stepping away for another role. I'm stepping away because this is the right moment to spend more time with my young family, time that public life often demands we set aside. Nunavut will hold its next general election on or before October 27th. Well, dozens of members of the Inuit community in Edmonton celebrated Nunavut Day early on Sunday with traditional throat singing, food, and Inuktitut language games. The event was a memorable hit. APTN's Chris Stewart brings us more.
For about 10 years, Guta Demaray has been coordinating Nunavut Day celebrations in Edmonton. And at Rundle Park on Sunday, that tradition continued. Cooler temperatures and rain kept some people away, but the 3 dozen or so people here certainly enjoyed themselves. Guta says it's vital to stay connected.
In the Arctic, it's a very small community, and on a daily basis, you're connecting with friends and family. But when you live in a city, it's such a big city. And so it's so important for our community to come together, to have celebration like Nunavut Day, so we can speak our language. We can do, some of our cultures and traditions.
Traditional foods like seal, Arctic char, and narwhal were on the menu. Elder Minnie celebrated her 86th birthday.
Happy birthday to you.
Guta was giving prizes to people who knew Inuktitut words.
If you know what Nazapi means, if you come and see me first, you get a prize.
And it's nice to be able to share the Inuktitut language for the urban Inuit, maybe that didn't have a chance to learn Inuktitut, because when you live in the city, it's hard to learn Inuktitut. So we have these events, as you can see today, building our vocabulary, playing little games, and in hopes that their vocabulary grows so our language continues.
I just would like to say hi to everyone. Nunavut, I miss you guys. You are loved. We're all loved.
Jana has been living in Edmonton for 3 years. She moved from Nunavut because housing was too hard to find.
Having events like this just fills that void a little bit, and I get to connect with people that I know and new people that I've met today. So it means more than words can say.
Chris Stewart, APTN National News, Edmonton.
The wildfire situation is heating up again, and in Manitoba, there's another ongoing wave of wildfires that's forcing some to evacuate their homes for a second time. As of Monday, Lynn Lake, Wallace Lake, Marcel Colomb First Nation, Matthias Colomb Cree Nation, Tatasquiac Cree Nation, and areas of Nopaming Provincial Park are all under evacuation orders. The town of Leaf Rapids also issued an evacuation notice for today. With more on this, here's APTN's Sierra Bettens.
After a stretch of hot weather and thunderstorms, there are now 81 active wildfires in Manitoba, placing 6 communities under evacuation orders. On Monday, the province provided an update.
We've had a lot of lightning go through the province. When numbers were really escalating, we were seeing over 25 new fires every 24-hour period popping up.
Residents of Lynn Lake and Marcelcolum First Nation are being forced to leave their homes a second time. On Friday, fires reportedly destroyed 7 homes in Akeeagok Cree Nation, where residents remain evacuated.
The 20-year average for this date is 187, and we are at 235. So we're definitely above average for the number of fires we've had so far this year.
In a Saturday press release, Manitoba Kiwetinowi Ogamaganik Inc. said up to 150 residents in the Opipinapawan Cree Nation have been medically evacuated. In a Sunday Facebook post, Pimpachikamak Cree Nation Chief David Monias said they've organized evacuations for Priority 1 residents, which include elders, people with medical conditions, and families with young children.
The Red Cross told us that they confirmed 60 rooms yesterday and 60 rooms today that are secured for evacuees. But they're prioritizing larger families, and certain families can stay together who are P1s. So if you have a P1 in your family and you're being sent out, then you can take your children.
The province is now monitoring 16 fires that could impact communities, and 6,600 Manitobans have been evacuated. Sierra Bettens, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Gary McLean passed away 6 years ago now, but his legacy lives on through the Indian Day School Fund named after him. McLean was a day school survivor from Manitoba Lake First Nation and was the lead plaintiff in a class action lawsuit. In Ottawa on Monday, the fund's board announced the launch of a $200 million program aimed at providing benefits to day school survivors. APTN's Fraser Needham has that story.
Claudette Comanda is the CEO of the McLean Day School Settlement Corporation, or MDSSC. She says the launch of the Legacy Fund has been a long time coming, but board members wanted to ensure it was done properly.
It was important for us as the McLean's Day School Board. It was important for us to take our time to do this right, to do it in a good way. And we were a firm believer in ensuring that the vision and the legacy of Gary McLean was all about justice and the survivors' voices.
The fund will provide 4 streams of funding targeted at survivor communities. These include up to $250,000 per year for 4 years for healing and wellness, up to $100,000 per year for 4 years for language and culture, a one-time payment of $100,000 spread over 4 years for commemoration, a one-time payment of $100,000 spread over 4 years for truth-telling. Each community is also eligible for a one-time payment of $25,000 to set up survivor committees. MDSSC board member Gloria Wells says it is important communities will be able to determine how funding is spent.
Because government have put out a lot of programs for everybody to try and get that self-help and healing, but it has not worked for our people. We need to come from our own, who we are, and that's why I strongly believe that ceremony and our language and our culture will be the ones to help us.
Roger Augustine is also on the board of the Legacy Fund. He says Gary McLean is never too far from his thoughts.
And whenever I feel that, I got moved on, I'll look at the crowd like this and he'd be sitting there waving, right? And I'm sure most of you could see that. The smiling face, the friendly face, a good person, a good man, and we lost him.
Commander adds McLean may be gone, but he is definitely not forgotten.
He was such a loving human being. Very loving, heart and soul. He was very knowledgeable. He really deeply cared for survivors, cared for all the communities right across Canada.
Communities can apply for funding from July 7th to the end of September 2025. Fraser Needham, APTN National News, Ottawa.
We're always looking for your feedback or story ideas. Here's how you can continue the conversation. If you have a story you want to share, you can send us an email to news@aptn.ca. To read and watch our stories, go to our website, aptnnews.ca. You can also find us online on your favorite social media sites, including TikTok, YouTube, LinkedIn, and X. Follow APTN News to join the conversation and see our latest stories. Youth in the North and NASA have partnered up for a week-long canoe trip. We'll bring you that story and more after the break. Welcome back. Staff from a Northern Youth Leadership and Yellowknife nonprofit partnered with NASA for the second year in a row to organize a week-long canoe trip, blending traditional and modern practices to combat environmental issues like climate change. APTN video journalist Bruce De La Cruz has more.
They were very fun and they supported me by blank, blank, blank.
Staff from Northern Youth Leadership, known as NYL, read through camper surveys from their latest On the Land project. Titled The Protecting Our Lands Camp, youth aged 11 to 16 from the Northwest Territories canoed during the last week of June on Canada's largest river, the Mackenzie, known as the Decho River in the Dene language. Starting from Fort Providence, Northwest Territories, and canoeing to Jean Marie River, the campers put in over 350 kilometers by the end of the trip. Researchers from NASA and Indigenous land guardians from Liliquay First Nation accompanied the group and held workshops to educate the youth on environmental monitoring in the Northwest Territories. Gabriel Brost, a Tlicho youth staff member and former camper, explains why the canoe trip's emphasis on environmental stewardship is important.
That's one thing I love about these camps is that when we go out on the land, when they are disconnected from social media and everything, is that they get to see the impacts and the changes that are occurring every day without even realizing it. And our NASA connection is very important because we get to see what they research as well and what impacts have been changing what they see as well.
Steph Woodworth, NYL's project director, also emphasizes how traditional practices and modern science go hand in hand to effectively combat environmental issues like climate change.
The late Tarek Leahy Chico once told me that his community understands what's happening to the land and they see it in real time, but the research can help explain why it's happening to the land. So I think by Indigenous knowledge systems coming together with Western science really creates a whole picture of what's happening to the land and why it's happening, and to find strategies and solutions to protect it.
As part of NYL's mission statement, Steph shares their opinion on why youth leadership begins on the land for some people.
I do think it starts on the land, because a lot of youth don't get the opportunity to go out on the land and to learn their culture, learn the local knowledge of the area, and get to experience what it is to do these types of trips. And by pushing yourself out of your comfort zone and living in these communities like on the land together, it really helps foster that positive change for youth. And I know like we get to see it in real time.
This was the second collaboration between NASA and Northern Youth Leadership, the first being a canoe trip to Hidden Lake Territorial Park in the summer of 2024. To stay up to date on NYL's events, be sure to check out their website at northernyouth.ca. Bruce De La Cruz, APTN National News, Yellowknife.
Thanks, Bruce. Time now for a look at one of this week's web poll questions. And we're asking, do you use more than one language at home or in your daily life? Your choices are yes or no. You can go to our website, aptnnews.ca/polls to cast your ballot on this and all of this week's poll questions. Still to come, we'll hear from a man who's traveling by canoe from Attawapiskat to Niskantika First Nation. Stick around. Welcome back. Here's a look at your current conditions. Sunny and 18 for Fredericton and Halifax. Cloudy and 11 in Kuujjuaq, 14 in Nain. Cloudy and 19 in Montreal. Sun's out and 18 in Chibougamau. 17 in Sault Ste. Marie. Sunny and 25 in Ottawa. 15 in Thunder Bay. 17 in Sioux Lookout. Smoky in Thompson and 16. Sunny and 14 in Norway House. 12 in Winnipeg. Sunny and 15 in Dauphin. 13 in Regina. 16 in North Battleford. 19 in Meadow Lake. 18 in La Ronge. Cloudy across much of northern Alberta. 24 in High Level, Fort Chipewyan and Fort McMurray. 26 in Edmonton. 29 in Lethbridge. Sunny and 25 in Vancouver. Sunny and 34 in Kamloops. Cloudy and 25 in Prince George. Showers and 19 in Dease Lake. 16 in Old Crow. Cloudy and 20 in Whitehorse. 22 and cloudy skies in Yellowknife. 25 in Norman Wells. 9 in Sax Harbor. 14 in Pawlatuck. 16 in Chesterfield. 18 in Baker Lake. 3 in Resolute. 12 in Iqaluit. For more than 2 weeks, Geronimo Cataquapit and his family have been traveling by canoe from their home of Attawapiskat First Nation to the Niskantika First Nation, a 400-kilometer stretch. And during their journey, they have placed flags along the river declaring that their family and many other Indigenous nations call Northern Ontario home. They're doing this as a direct response to the federal government's controversial Bill C-5. They will speed up the approval process for new resource development, including in the Ring of Fire in Northern Ontario. When they arrive in Niskantika, they also plan to organize a protest camp to try and stop any resource development. Creason recently spoke to Geronimo from the Attawapiskat River. Here's that interview.
Geronimo Cataquapit, thank you for speaking with us. Can you tell us why you wanted to start this journey from your home in Attawapiskat to Niskantika?
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for having me, Creason. So originally we started this journey up the Attawapiskat River to reassert our presence within our own home, within our home territories, in response to Bill 5, in response to Bill C-5. When I first heard of Bill C-5, Bill 5 was already on my radar. That's when I knew, like, okay, this is happening. This is coming. The Ring of Fire is coming, and it's coming fast in a way that violates our treaty rights, who we are as Indigenous people. So I reached out to my parents and I said, clear the summers. I'm going to clear mine. We need to go onto the rivers. We need to start reasserting our presence. We need to set up family flags, First Nations flags. We need to start building cabins along the river. We need to fight this. So we went ahead and I started reaching out to as many people that would listen to a 20-year-old do something like this on a scale like this. And since then, we've really come a long way. We've traveled well over 400 kilometers up the Attawapiskat River in June when the river isn't suitable for travel. It was a hard and long journey, but it was worth it because we're here now. We are here with Niskantika First Nation at our joint encampment at the All Season Road. It was hard. There were many times where we were we had troubles crossing the rapids, especially, but it was well worth it in the end, for sure. And what we're doing is still ongoing.
Yeah, Geronimo, I wanted to ask you about that. How has your journey been so far, and for you and your family in terms of the weather and the conditions there?
Oh yeah, for sure. So my parents' motto during the entire travel was just slow and steady wins the race, because we aren't even going like 10 kilometers, 5 kilometers per hour all the way up the river, because the water is only maybe 3 feet, maybe 2 feet deep at times. And luckily for us, for the first half of our travels up the Akeeagok River, our journey has been good. I mean, the weather's been nice. There hasn't been any rain. We haven't traveled during any thunderstorms. It wasn't until we actually started approaching the Akeeagok First Nation is where things began to get dry, and where we had lots of trouble getting past rapids. But it's been sunny weather, and we've been grateful for it. And any days where it was raining, it actually raised the water level quite a bit for us to get past certain areas a lot easier, for sure.
Like you said, Geronimo, you have been planting flags along the way, declaring Northern Ontario as Indigenous land. Can you tell us what you have planned for when you get to Akeeagok?
Yes, for sure. So right now, we're not actually going to Akeeagok First Nations. We plan to meet them here at one of the temporary encampments that we have. Right now, our current plan is this is a temporary encampment that we're currently at. It's actually later today, we're gonna start going up around two more kilometers upriver at one of the all-season road crossings, and we're gonna go ahead and brush cut that area. And at that area is where we're going to build our cabins, going to build our flags, whatever. Then we're going to start flying in numbers from Akeeagok First Nation and other First Nations that want to come support us as we go build these cabins on the river. That's currently the plan, and we have more stuff on the way after that as well.
And Geronimo, what is your message to Prime Minister Mark Carney and his cabinet regarding Bill C-5, but also Ontario Premier Doug Ford and his bill that will essentially do the same thing?
My message is that you can't come into our home. You can't come into our home and do whatever you want without our consent. Everything comes from this land. The very essence of who we are comes from this land. There's a story behind every tree, every river, every creek. This is where my history comes from. This is where the culture comes from. This is who I am, these lands, these waters. And my message to the Prime Minister and Doug Ford as well is to withdraw these bills, withdraw them in their entirety. There's no amending them. This is no longer about consultation. This is about consent. And if we continue on this path, we're going to pick a big fight with Indigenous peoples, just not here, but all across Turtle Island.
Geronimo Kataquapit, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you for your time.
Awesome. Thank you.
And you can find that interview and much more on Geronimo's journey on our website. Well, that's all the time we have for your first look at today's news. We'll be back here at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Of course, you can always stay up to date with the very latest by visiting our website, aptnnews.ca. I'm Dennis Ward, Marcy McGuitch. Thanks for being with us. Enjoy your afternoon.